Should be very strict rules in a free society, and these are ancient rules. You know, like you don't kill people, you don't hurt people, you don't steal from people, and you follow your promises. But the promise is, just as in economics, you make a voluntary transaction, the government shouldn't be interfering with the voluntary contract economically, and if you break your contract, the government should be there to enforce the contract. Well, that's the way it should be in social issues as well. I've always been amazed at how casually we accept the notion correctly that the government shouldn't be telling us what we can read, and you can read controversial things, you can read books on communism, and we don't, burn books, at least we're not supposed to. We don't do that. At the same time, we're fairly tolerant, less so in the last few years, with other people's religion. And this is pretty important stuff, we're dealing with our salvation and our eternity and our intellectual life. But then when it comes to our bodies, all of a sudden the government says, you don't have enough brains to do it. You have to have us to take care of you. And then they have rules on, think of all the rules of the FDA. I mean, what you can do and can't do. I mean, they have actually gotten to the point, which is rather strange, but I don't know whether anybody cares about this. I care about it because it's a freedom issue. Why should the federal government be involved in telling us whether or not we are allowed to drink raw milk or not? I mean, medicine is a mess, and it's gotten to be a mess in my lifetime because the government got involved about 40 years ago, and it's gotten worse. But one prohibition is for patients to seek out alternative care. Now, I have a lot of regards for conventional medicine. I practice conventional medicine, but I also know and respect personal choices. People should have personal choices on alternative care, but there's too many prohibitions. What about nutritional substances and buying vitamins and other forms of medication? There's too many rules and regulations, which I think undermines the competition and actually serves to boost up the prices. You should have freedom of choice in your lifestyle. You should have freedom of choice in your food products. You should have freedom of choice in your nutritional products. And we shouldn't make the assumption that without the government, the world would come to an end. I think it was Jon Stewart the other night was accusing me. He says, maybe you have too much confidence in the people. He says, don't you think that the people will, and I think he was being very nice, but I think he was subtly saying that you do have to have regulations. I said, yeah, but who are the regulators? They're the people. And they're, And unfortunately, for those who argue the case, and they're very sincere, they'll say, well, you have to have regulations, or the whole economy would collapse and all this harm would be done and people would be dying in the streets. But who are the regulators? If you want regulations on food and drugs, it's the people whose special interests are concerned. I mean, the drug companies are the lobbyists that come in and they write the regulations. Who do you think writes the banking regulations? The ones to protect the consumer? No, it's usually the ones that protects the banks. So when the banks get protected, and they're they also are, the big ones are too big to fail, guess who gets bailed out? Do people get bailed out? No, people don't get bailed out. Middle class people lose their jobs and they lose their houses. At the same time, the people that were making a lot of money on these economic bubbles, they end up getting bailed out. So all this effort, and like I say, a lot of them do it because they want to help people and protect people, and they don't think they'd be taken care of in a free market economy. But there are some who know exactly what's going on, and we've been coming across a few of them who understand whose interests are best served with the Federal Reserve. Even today, there were two major articles, one in the Wall Street Journal and one by George Will. And they keep saying, boy, this is terrible stuff. They are attacking, the independence of the Fed. And we hear this over and over again. But every time you hear the argument that the Fed has to be independent, you know what that means? They want to be totally secret and have no responsibility to tell us what they're doing. So when we finally got a partial audit on the Fed, found out that in the bailout they were dealing with $15 trillion, a third of it went to foreign banks. And then they argue that we're not supposed to know about this. And this is one issue that we're winning on. I mean, now, the large majority of American people now know something about the Federal Reserve. And even if they might not agree with my position that we should phase it out, what they're saying is we should know about it and we should audit the Federal Reserve. I say that's one major step, because if we find out exactly what they're doing, they'll probably have to leave.